Not even believe that the holiday seasons of celebration of so many different cultures is just around the corner. And so we are just excited to be here in this space with you. Our students are amazing, and they have positioned themselves to be vulnerable, to be open, to be honest, and we are just honored to be in this space with you so that we can learn from each other, and most importantly, learn from them. So, without further ado, passing it on.
Hi, everybody. I am Michael Leali, and we're going to open tonight by offering a land acknowledgement. And what this means is that we recognize that we are on the land of the indigenous Native American tribes of the Illinois, Miami, Winnebago, Fox, Sauk, Kickapoo, Shawnee, and Potawatomi tribes. And now, I'm going to hand it over to Miss Osich, who is going to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do.
Good evening, everybody. The purpose of the Coalition is to bring people together from various backgrounds, experiences, and perspectives for the purpose of amplifying student voices from historically marginalized backgrounds in order to increase equity within our schools and community. Tonight, their voices will move you. Their stories will continue to guide us as a district to grow and shift to meet the needs of all of our students. If you notice students putting up a peace sign, it's just a sign of solidarity to a relatable experience. Feel free to join in if something speaks to you.
I probably should have mentioned, my name is Dr. Waller. Um, and so the students and I and these phenomenal teachers have been getting together, and I actually had them all engage in a mindful moment. And so they were like, we loved it, let's do it at Amplify. So we would also encourage you to get into this space. As we center ourselves, we know that in doing this, it will open our hearts and open our minds to receive everything that we're going to hear, and most importantly, apply it, right? Because our babies are communicating with us, but that means that we need to have compassion, and compassion is empathy in action. So if you feel comfortable, close your eyes. Very good. I want you to picture someone you love. What do they look like? Are they smiling? Are they laughing? What is the background? What sounds do you hear? Perhaps you're in your favorite place. Remember, as you're doing this, to breathe in slowly and release slowly. Are we ready? Breathe in and release. Open your eyes. Let's do it. We're going to amplify mental health tonight. Thank you again for having us, and I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Piper.
We'd like to take the opportunity to introduce everyone that was involved in putting this on for us tonight. I'm going to begin with the adults, right? Dr. Jadon Waller has already introduced herself. We also have Michael Leali. Miriam Osich. Evie Martin. I'm Jamie Piper. And we have Diana Palumbo with us as well. Now, we are the least important part of this, so I'd like to move on to the most important part, which is our student panel and our student coalition. I will introduce them one by one. We have Fayral, Amila, Lanaya, Mahira, Eva, Naima, Feiruz, Natalie, Isabel, Chasey, Carson, Kaz, Jayla, Ruthie, Alexandra, Melissa, Karina, Azaya is unable to join us tonight. Kennedy is also unable to join us tonight. We have Maya. And Layla is also unable to join us this evening. Estefany. Roa. Hannah. Sophia. Koa. Amanda. And one last big round of applause for our courageous student panel.
All right, tonight we are going to ask our students a series of questions, and they've already prepared some answers. We've been practicing, they've been thinking really, really hard about how to answer these questions. In between questions, we're going to have some presentations and performances that students have also prepared that are dedicated to mental health and the intersectionality of identity and who we are and how we deal with different parts of our lives. So our first question is, what is the relationship between mental health and trauma? And we're going to turn to Steph for the first answer.
Hello. To me, there's really no way to explain the relationship between mental health and trauma. To me, it's like a sister relationship. They go hand in hand. Trauma can stream from mental health, and mental health can stream from trauma. And our traumatic experiences can get us stuck even deeper in our toxic mental health cycles. I know for me personally, childhood trauma and generational trauma can sometimes get me stuck in those depressive cycles.
Thank you so much, Steph. Kaz.
So mental health and trauma goes hand in hand. When going through trauma, your mental health is affected, and your mental health in the moment affects your response to trauma. They work together to build your emotional response and reactions to situations.
Thank you, Kaz. All right, we have our second question now, and we're going to turn to Feiruz for our second question. How do you feel when people tell you to get over it?
All right, so when someone tells me to get over it, I feel like I'm being belittled in a way. Telling someone to get over it dismisses their struggles, and I would argue that it has the same effect as just telling them to shut up. It makes me feel like a burden to them and that dealing with my feelings are too much. So I usually shut down and I start to question myself and whether I'm actually like a problem, like if I'm making a problem out of nothing. And to be honest, I'm still trying to remember this myself, but I do know that everyone deserves to be feeling whatever they are feeling, and that everyone deserves to be heard, no matter how small the issue may seem.
Thank you so much. Amila.
I think when somebody tells me to get over it, they're trying to avoid my feelings. For me personally, I kind of hide everything away. So if I do tell somebody what is actually going on, they just tell me to get over it, I'm really gonna like shut down. I think that also if somebody tells me to get over it and it's like a really close friend of mine, I really get like upset and I feel like they're not a true friend at some point, and I think that it does affect you a lot.
Thank you very much. Lexi.
Okay, so when someone tells me to get over it, it kind of reminds me of a balloon. The balloon being the body, and the air inside is all of life's bad traumas and stress and anger and homework and school, sports. The list can go on and on. When the balloon gets too full, there's no more coming back. So for the balloon to remain, the balloon must let some of that pressure go, not all at once where it deflates, but little by little where it's still with itself without danger. Relating this, I love to complain. Yeah, it's annoying, it's a little irritating, but complaining is actually healthy, not just for the mind, but also for the body. The sound might be annoying and irritating when a little bit of air is released from the balloon, but letting that pressure go can free the balloon of the added stress and thoughts and guilt. It can save the balloon. It can save a life. Relating this back to mental health and not Party City supplies, it locks all the pressure up inside when someone tells me to get over it. It's like they took the end of the balloon, wrapped it around their finger, and it's just holding it there. The body can only hold a certain amount of pressure, this certain amount being a little box in one's heart. This being, no matter how big or how small this pressure is, it's going to overfill the box. And not letting to take out this pressure, it instantly turns into guilt. Not only am I guilty for feeling foolish by putting this unknown pressure, this unknown burden on my friend, but now I'm feeling guilty of being that burden to my friend. So when someone tells me to get over it, it's basically telling me to be quiet. I do not want to hear from you right now. I don't want to hear your problems. It's basically shutting you out. So you can either do one of two things. You can either hide it all inside, making the balloon expand and expand and expand until it's too dangerous. Or you can find a different solution. Find someone like your mom or your dad or even a therapist who will listen to you and who will take the time to help you. Find your person, instead of telling you to get over it, will help you get over it.
Thank you. That's some powerful imagery with that balloon. Thanks, Lexi. Eva, we'd love to hear from you next.
Okay, so I went to someone who I trusted and thought that they would understand me, but then told me to get over it. I feel like they are trying to shush me and that I'm not being listened to. And I just want to shut down because I feel like no one cares about me or my feelings. I think that I'm just being dramatic and it's not a big deal. So I shouldn't tell anyone anything anymore because people are going to tell me the same thing over and over again.
Thank you, Eva. And we're going to close out this question with a response from Hannah.
When somebody tells me to go over it, it feels like my emotions and my experiences are invalidated or like I don't matter to them. If I'm telling somebody I trust about my feelings, I shouldn't have to feel like I'm in a competition with them.
Thank you, Hannah. This is going to be what it's like all night with these questions and hearing from these students, and I'm so excited that they are sharing their stories and their experiences. And one of the opportunities we had this evening was to partner with Anderson's Bookshop and their education director, Lori Barber, who I'm going to invite up to the stage right now, who looked at recent releases of titles that are for young adults and for middle school aged children that amplify the intersectionality of mental health and various identities. So I'm going to turn the microphone over now to Lori to give us a little bit of information about some of these amazing titles. Thanks, Lori.
Thank you, Michael. First of all, thank you so much for having me. It's been 10 minutes, and I'm already just so in awe of these young people and very, very grateful to be part of this community. We did some research in the shop and thought about some titles that can support students in dealing with mental health issues and really can support everybody. I've read several of these books, and I'm almost 50 years old. So for me, it really was about having kids be able to have books in their hands that they can see each other in, see themselves in, and feel supported and not alone. So I'm going to run through, I have not a lot of time, I'm going to run through 14 titles in about 6 minutes, so get ready. The first book I have is Anna Birch's I Kissed Alex, and this is a beautiful book, focuses on depression and anxiety. One of the main characters, there are two, needs a scholarship and also has a very complicated relationship with an alcoholic parent. Real highlighting of the toxicity at home that can gets brought into schools, gets brought into relationships. I identified heavily with this book, and I know it will help kids work through some of those feelings that they're having as well. Little and Lion by Brandy Colbert is a beautiful book where mental illness and identity collide. It's a really insightful and compassionate story about Suzette. She's home from an East Coast boarding school to help her stepbrother, Lionel, and he's recently been diagnosed with bipolar disorder. More complex as Lionel is spiraling down and deeper into his disorder. Suzette is also falling for the same girl that he is in love with, so a very complicated and beautiful story. The third one is The Sea in Winter. Wow, this book just blew me away. I read it last year, and it's about a girl named Maisie. She is a native of the Makah and Piscataway tribe and is struggling with anxiety, depression following a knee injury. All of her friends are going to audition for their super fun summer intensive dance programs, and Maisie, also a ballerina, is at home doing PT and feels very much left behind, feels very much isolated, and as her anxieties and her moods deepen, she embarks on a midwinter trip with her family. So she has a really supportive family, but she's also got to figure out how she can move through what's going on with her. Lily and Duncan is such a fantastic book. Lily was assigned male at birth. She is a female, and Duncan is a boy who's dealing with bipolar disorder. And they meet one summer morning, and over the next few months, they have a relationship that builds into such a beautiful crescendo of revelation, and it highlights two teens whose journey is actually really just beginning. The Silence That Binds Us by Joanna Ho just came out this year. It is an extraordinary story of a girl named Mei Chen. She wants to be a writer, which is definitely not what her Chinese, Taiwanese American mom wants for her. May's brother just got into Princeton, and he is the golden child, but he has secretly struggled with depression, and his parents don't see it at all. Yep. And unfortunately, May's world is shattered when he dies by suicide. As May's parents face a lot of racist stereotypes about how they raise their son and the pressure they put on him, May challenges these stereotypes through her writing and also works through her grief and guilt at the same time. And can I just go? Whoops. Oh, space. Thanks. There we go. Wow. My friend Kathleen read this book and could not stop talking about it, told me that I couldn't be her friend unless I read this book, and so I read it, and she's absolutely right. This is As Long as the Lemon Trees Grow, and this is a story about a girl named Salama who is working in the Syrian Revolution as a volunteer at a hospital. She's already lost so much and is working to help all of the wounded that come through in droves day after day. And because of her PTSD that she has suffered, she has manifested a physical embodiment of her fear in the form of an imagined companion. He haunts her in an effort to keep her safe. It is really, really an extraordinary book. And then, of course, we have only a few years old, but really a classic. Darius the Great is not okay. Darius heads to Iran to meet his mom's family, and he has a hard time explaining his things like taking his meds for his depression to his grandparents because they don't understand it. However, he meets Sarab, and everything changes for Darius as his new friend helps him feel more and more like himself. And speaking of things that are okay, We Are Okay by Nina LaCour is a short but incredibly powerful book. It won the Prince Award the year it was published, and it's about a girl named Marin. She left everything behind in her town and moved completely across the country after a tragedy struck her family. She left her best friend, Mabel, and hasn't talked to her in months. Marin is still suffering from grief that has left her completely emotionally paralyzed. And she's got to ready herself, unfortunately, or fortunately, because Mabel is visiting, and so are all the things left unsaid between the two of them. And Kyle Lukoff, he's just brilliant, wrote a book called Too Bright to See. As you can tell by all of the stickers, it won all of the awards last year, including the National Book Award. He was a finalist for that. And this is a story about Bug, who is also lost in grief and sadness after a death in the family. But a ghost joins Bug with an important message that helps Bug move through grief and discover the truth about gender identity. This was one of my favorite reads of the year. For those of you who are Heartstopper fans, Alice Oseman has written a new book. It just came out a few weeks ago. I Was Born for This is the story of Ginny Kagarichi, and he has it all. He is the frontman of the Ark, which is a band that has just exploded onto the music scene. He has amazing fans that accept him as transgender. But behind that glamorous life, Jimmy is gripped by increasing anxiety as he deals with rumors, betrayal, and all of those downsides of fame. This story really it's really powerful. Mark Oshiro's Anger is a Gift is the story of Moss Jeffries. His father was murdered by an Oakland police officer and has been vilified by the media in his death. This has left Marcus traumatized as well, and he is dealing with massive, crippling panic attacks. Now, as he and his high school classmates find themselves increasingly treated like criminals in his school, Moss must decide to give in to either fear and hate or understand that his anger actually might be a gift. All of this is happening and spinning around in Moss's life, and he is also falling in love and exploring his orientation. The Astonishing Color of After is a book about guilt, grief, and all of the things that happen when you are affected by someone who has died by suicide. Lee Chen Sanders is certain that her mom, who died by suicide, has turned into a bird. And so she travels to Taiwan to meet her grandparents, and search for her mother. As she searches, she both forges a new relationship with her grandparents and also must reconcile that on the day that her mom took her own life, Lee was kissing her BFF and secret crush for the very first time. So it's like a book about guilt and finding your way through guilt and grief. Two more, I Am Not Your Perfect Mexican Daughter, is just an extraordinary book. It also won a National Book Award, and it is about a tragic accident that leaves her sister dead, and Julia, who is the main character, her mom tries to turn Julia into the perfect daughter because that's what her sister once was. She does not see that Julia is suffering from depression. So this story is about Julia's ability to confront the pressure she's feeling to live up to her mom's impossible ideal. And finally, one of my favorites, The Gravity of Us by Phil Stamper. These two guys meet when their parents are thrust into the limelight because they're selected for a mission to Mars. And they fall for each other as they're swept up in the media frenzy. It's a beautiful exploration and open discussion about depression and anxiety in ourselves and in those we love. I wanted to thank you all for having me here tonight. I hope that you guys take something away with this and that everybody in the audience does as well. And again, thank you for allowing me to be part of your community.
Thank you so much, Lori. We really appreciate you. And your passion and your commitment to the peace sign was automatic. We have actually purchased 10 of these books, and we would love to raffle them off this evening. So if you at some point skipped the tables out front, quietly double back, rip it in half, because we do want to give these away. In addition, since I'm talking about out there in the hallway, we do have NAMI out front as well. We have Safe Space, so I really want to thank Michelle Early for just helping to get that together. We also have our Parents for Education and Global Success. They're present as well, and we have Valerie Talton, who is phenomenal, and she is also out front and would love to raffle off her amazing journal. So thank you so much, Lori, and we hope we can get this party going. You ready? All right, so our next question. Does your trauma or mental health define who you are? Faria, can you lead us in this?
Okay. In today's society, many people talk about mental health in a way that is not particularly empathetic for people in general. In many environments, people look down upon mental health. Some may portray mental health as a sign of weakness or that you should not acknowledge the darkness of mental health and trauma. However, this is not true. Everyone should at least attempt to be introspective about why you feel the way that you do, and the understanding that you're not alone can work wonders. A great starting point would be for children. They need to be given tools by parents and adults to understand what they're feeling and why. This requires an empathetic approach to one's trauma and mental health, which much of society is lacking. Mental health can impact people's day-to-day lives, but the negative experiences from trauma and mental health should not define them, but rather the recovery guides one to self-understanding. Positive experiences also shape people, and it is important to remember that how much of that attributes to who you are is up to you. In a child's case, their upbringing can affect how they act and approach themselves too, but they can have expectations placed on them that can warp their understanding of how they relate to the world. For me personally, I have struggled with mental health and trauma at a young age, but I understood that I am not alone. I gained empathy for others and did not let the experience define me, but rather the aftermath, the growth from learning, and support shape who I am today.
Wow, that was very powerful. Thank you so much. Next, we have Mahira.
So going off of what Fariel said, I said no, trauma and the state of one's mental health should not be a label that affects one's identity and it doesn't show who they are. When people are comfortable in sharing their trauma and allowing other people to see how it affects their life, they show themselves getting through that trauma as a form of strength and empowerment, defining them instead. So as a result, your trauma doesn't define who you are, only the positive growth that people may feel after from healing.
Excellent, thank you. And to close us out, we have Maya.
My mental health doesn't define me as a person. It's definitely a part of me and impacts my character, but I'm so much more than the struggles I have with my mental health. I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety when I was going into my freshman year of high school, but that isn't what makes me me. I have so much more substance than that, and while those issues do affect relationships I have with other people and parts of my personality, I'm still a loyal friend, a good sister, and so much more. My mental health doesn't supersede my true character.
Thank you so much, Maya. We have a piece now from Naima.
I guess I'll just hold it. So my name is Naima Morris, and I'm reading off a poem that I wrote called I Don't Want to Wake Up Tomorrow. But you hang up the phone when you see me eating the whole pie. Gold and grainy crumbs all over the sides of my mouth, the whole aluminum pan on my lap, only a tiny slivers left of flaky crust and sweet apple. I look up at you and frantically move the pie out of view. Your approach is hesitant, as if walking on the thinnest panes of glass. You sit beside me and look into my distant gray eyes. My eyes turn to the ground as my vision becomes blurry. Oceans of water at the brim, eagerly wanting to be released from my eyes. You lean in and give me a separate and distant embrace. The overwhelming scent of blackened milds paired with the underlying notes of decadent sweet floral fruits stained into your soft black blazer. The moment was short-lived when you suddenly pull away, dedication on your face as you pull me off the messy couch. You insist to dance it out.
Me stiff and you smooth, moving to the music like you were back in the 90s. The dance is awkward, but it's thoughtful. Watching your infectious smile as you tried to get me to match your energy, but I knew in the back of my mind that the dancing wasn't for me, but for you. You didn't ask to raise someone like me, you weren't equipped. No textbook or curriculum prepared you for 17 years of tiny bombs waiting to be triggered. But you still made the effort to dance for 4.5 minutes, even though I know you'd rather finish that phone call from later, and I would rather finish continuing that pie.
Thank you so much, Naima. That was beautiful. Roa, we are going to turn to you for a little explanation of what racial trauma is.
Okay, racial trauma is the result of ongoing exposure to racial stressors such as racism, racist bias, and discrimination, violence against people of color, and racist abuse in the media that creates an environment in which a person of color feels unsafe simply because of the color of their skin. It is widespread among all marginalized and stigmatized racial of authentic groups. I experienced racial trauma in a place that was supposed to feel safe and comfortable, and that was the school. A little backstory about me: I started wearing the hijab starting up my freshman year to connect with God more personally. Walking into high school, I expected people to treat me equally and respectfully as if I was the same as you. Instead, I was treated disrespectfully, and I received hatred from the same peers as you. I was told that I was a threat because I'm a Muslim. I was a walking bomb that would lead to terrorism. Apparently, wearing a hijab made some people uncomfortable, and it was a threat. Some people would say me wearing a hijab was being forced, but wearing the hijab was one of the best decisions I've made for myself. I'm not here to be on display. My body is not for public consumption, and I will not be reduced to an object. I am a soul and mind and a servant to my Lord. My worth is defined by my beauty of my soul, my heart, and my moral character. With my hijab, I put my face on display rather than my beauty. And I was offended because knowing what happened with my people back in home in Palestine, and that is still happening to this day, when they are getting physically bombed at and shot at and taken away from their families and home. And being in a school where we have to learn about stopping discrimination and racial threat is not being done or said enough, and is something that needs to be fixed soon, and soon means now. What's being said or shown on the news does not mean we repeat what's being done just because we look up to the same religion or culture or have the same race. We are all human, but we are all different. Racism is not an excuse to have us be treated differently. Why do you have to feel the urge to racially discriminate against others and judge towards the people that are wearing something that signifies a religion? Michelle Obama once said that race and racism is a reality that so many of us grow up learning to just deal with. It is not, but if we ever hope to move past it, it cannot just be on people of color to deal with. It's up to all of us, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, Muslim, and everyone else. No matter how well-meaning we think we might be to do the honest, uncomfortable work, rooting it out. Thank you.
All right, that was wonderful, Roa. Thank you for those powerful words. Our next question is going to be for Natalie first. Natalie, how has the pandemic impacted your mental health?
The pandemic impacted my mental health for the worse. I had always struggled with depressive thoughts, but I never took my own mental health seriously until it reached its lowest point during quarantine. I had lost family to COVID-19 and also lost contact with many close friends. This accumulation of events, along with the general isolation I felt during quarantine, really destroyed my mental health to the point where it was affecting every aspect of my life. I completely isolated myself from those who cared about me and started doing poorly in school. I had shifted from being a motivated, hardworking, straight-A student my whole life to failing most of my classes seemingly overnight. The pandemic made it extremely hard to break the cycle of wallowing in my depressive thoughts, and I had to put in the effort to improve myself. However, because of the lows I experienced during the pandemic, I now know how to deal with my mental health better than I did before.
Thank you. Amanda.
The pandemic made me feel isolated. Being alone and having time to reflect made me remember traumatic events in my life that I didn't even know existed. Reliving that trauma was the hardest thing to do because I didn't ask for help then and I didn't feel like I could ask for help now. I didn't talk to anyone, so I kept it in, and those feelings started to rise again. I felt disgusted in my own skin, and I didn't think I was good enough. I got very depressed and mad that I didn't have the courage to help myself. I've always been self-conscious about my weight, but since the pandemic, I have developed social anxiety because of it. The pandemic made me realize that I needed help, which is one of the hardest things to admit, and it has been affecting my mental health ever since.
Thank you. I'm just so proud of these guys. They're amazing. Thank you. Amila.
I think the pandemic really affected my mental health because you were looking at the internet most of the time. You relied on the internet to see what you should look like and what should happen. I feel like from going from 6th to 8th grade and from 6th to 7th grade being in the pandemic and 8th grade being being the recovery of it, and now being a freshman and seeing back on what has happened. I think that the pandemic really affected my mental health because you saw what people think you should be, and the weight difference that you thought you should be, and the effect by it. Even though that the internet is what you should not rely on, you still looked back at it and thought that you should.
Thank you, Amila. Melissa.
So when the pandemic hit, I was in 8th grade, and when everything started to get back to normal, I was a sophomore. And during that pandemic, I became very anxious, and my anxiety levels went up. When I was young, I created all these goals of images of how high school would be, and all that time and goals that I had were taken away from me. I felt like I was in a really dark place, and when things started to get back to normal, I was scared that the goals and the plans that I created were going to be taken away, or worse things were going to happen, which was a really negative thought. But I think during the pandemic, everything was just hard, and I felt like I was going to fall back into that dark place. And obviously now that everything's like getting back to normal, I've realized that I need the help, and I've become more positive and realized that we all went through this, but we can overcome these hardships. But during that time, it was a really hard place for me.
Thank you, Melissa. And we're going to close out this question with a response from Chasey.
Through the pandemic, I've done a lot of self-reflection. With that, I've had a lot of realizations about my mental health. But now I can focus on my mental health, and I have learned to care for it.
Thank you.
So when we went through these questions, because of course we needed to practice, we talked about another aspect of the pandemic, and I definitely shared my own personal piece. And so I would love it if you agree, or you've had that experience based on the pandemic, to just acknowledge with your peace signs. Was it difficult for you when the world did open back up, and the pressures that you had to live up to, and the requests and the friendships and the sports and the activities? Was it hard to kind of get back into the full swing of things? Did anyone have anxiety around the idea of having to shift into a school space with all of the different nuances? I'm sure educators as well, and parents. Because the pandemic definitely was overwhelming for so many, and there was so much loss. But I know for many of you it was also an opportunity to slow down. Did any of you take the opportunity to slow down? Yes. Did anybody come up with a new hobby or learn something new? Did anyone take time to focus on their mental health? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waller. And now we're going to turn it back to Chasey for a special presentation.
Oh, that was loud. Apologies. Hello, my name is Chasey White, and I'd like to share my story about discovering my experiences with childhood trauma that is still affecting me to this very day. I went to daycare in an at-home environment with a neighbor. The neighbor lived down the street, and she was a grandmother. I attended with a few other children whose ages ranged, but mainly myself and 2 others for long term. We began going to this daycare around ages 3 or 4. As a child, I totally thought everything was normal. Because she was an adult and authority figure, we were expected to trust her and listen and follow all her rules. This was like every other situation with an adult that has ever watched me. The kid is right, the adult is right, the kid is wrong type of situation. But there were occasions I was truly afraid in that environment. However, when the adult is always right, that left me feeling like I was always in the wrong, no matter what. Therefore, I didn't say anything to my parents or anyone else. It wasn't until years after leaving that environment that I was able to begin reflecting on those experiences where I was afraid. I found myself in a discussion with another person who attended with me. During this discussion, we began to realize that we were not treated appropriately. I was left doing further reflection and started to wonder if there was even more to this than I realized. Aside from these realizations, I also began seeing a therapist. When I began sharing my experiences about daycare with my therapist, it started to become apparent that things really weren't quite what they seemed. Those realizations consisted of recognizing trauma that was experienced. I realized that her reactions to some of my mistakes were excessive, and how she treated me during those times was not appropriate. She did not just get upset, but she was excessively yelled in another language, which made it difficult to understand what I was even being yelled at for, and it made it even more difficult to correct my mistake. It caused fear, not just of getting yelled at, but never knowing when I was going to step out of line. It was not only me on the receiving end of these reactions. If another child was present and did something that she did not like, she would not hesitate to yell at them, especially when I was sitting right next to them. This also caused fear because I never knew if I was also in trouble. Experiencing these things while growing up has had a significant impact on my mental health. The result of those experiences has manifested into things like triggers. When anyone is getting yelled at around me, I begin to panic because I immediately think that I'm the one in trouble or that I'm the one that caused the other person to get yelled at. Since I never understood what I was being yelled at for, I always feel like I've done something wrong. It makes it really easy to blame myself for things that aren't my fault. This can be really draining on someone's mental health, constantly thinking that they are doing something wrong, especially during school where it can be almost paralyzing when you're around many other students who are getting yelled at. I also have other triggers that I'm still discovering and exploring, as I've only recently realized the correlation between my childhood and my current struggles with mental health. But they also affect my life every day. Relationships with friends become more difficult to navigate when they are unaware of my triggers. They may do something that triggers me without knowing it, and they are very confused to why I'm upset. But through this journey, I've found a lot of positives. I'm much more aware of my own mental health and its importance. As such, I'm now on a journey to wellness. I'm able to take care of myself more effectively and appropriately with the knowledge I have now. I am also more aware and open to the struggles of others. I've gained the courage to share my story in hopes to inspire others, as this is my first time sharing it. Thank you for listening to my story, and I hope I can inspire others to prioritize their mental health.
Chasey, thank you so much for sharing and being open and vulnerable with us tonight. We really appreciate it. Maya, we're going to turn to you now to learn a little bit about what individual trauma is.
Individual trauma is the result of an event, series of events, or set of circumstances that is experienced by an individual as physically harmful, emotionally harmful, or life-threatening, and that has lasting adverse effects.
Thank you very much for sharing that. Our next question is going to start with Lexi. Lexi, who is responsible for keeping you safe now, and how are they doing?
Okay, so I believe that no one should be responsible for my safety because it is my person, and I should be responsible for myself. But because it is 2022 and I'm a 16-year-old female, it's really hard to be safe by myself. So my bodyguard is my 14-year-old brother. But why is he my bodyguard? He is literally my younger brother. Yes, he is a super duper tall Hulk man-child thing, but why do I need him to just walk to Walmart at 7:30? Why do I need him to go walk downtown with me? Why do I need him to go to the grocery store, to the mall? Even when I'm with my cousin, he has to be there. He's doing fine, but my plans usually depend on my 14-year-old brother's wants. Like, he would usually want to play video games or watch MLS soccer or do something else that he wants to do instead of going walk downtown or to the mall with me. But nevertheless, my brother makes me feel a lot safer. He is my landmark when I do not feel safe, and I know he's my beacon for when I need help. He will always help me get out of bad situations, and if I'm in trouble, he'll help me in an instant. He might be a jerk, but he is my jerk, and he's always there to help. I don't need a man to save me, but I need a brother to help me.
What a gorgeous tribute to your brother. That was lovely. Thank you. Next, we're going to hear from Eva.
I am responsible for my own safety because I know what can harm me or what is bad for me. Younger me wouldn't care about anything, but now being a 15-year-old girl in this generation is scary. I can't really go anywhere without feeling unsafe. That's why, sorry. That's why my dad is my safe someone. I chose my dad because when I go out, I feel safe with him. On the outside, he seems like a really scary guy, a person you don't want to mess with, but on the inside, he is such a sweet, funny guy who you can go to for anything. But when I go anywhere with my mom, she looks more like my sister. I notice how people stare at us or look at us or look at her differently. I know eyes are for looking, but it makes me uncomfortable when people look at me because how tall I am or how developed I am for a 15-year-old. I feel like I'm guarding my mom more than she is guarding me. But with my dad, I know he would never let anything happen to me, and I know he would do anything for me if something were to happen. He is like my knight, and I know he is there when I need him the most. Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Roa.
So lots of people would say a male who can protect us like a father, a brother, husband, or boyfriend, which I agree 100% could be true for most of us. Although for me, I'd say a person who would keep me safe mentally and physically would be my mom and my sisters. Knowing that they are my comfort person and being my safe place is a big thing. Every time I would go out, I'd feel right and safe because my sister or my mother would be there giving me the reassurance I need without asking for it. My mom is my first friend, my best friend, and my forever friends. Thank you.
Beautiful, Roa. Thank you. And we are going to close out this question with a response from Carson.
For me personally, I would say my parents are in charge of keeping me safe. My mom because she's a therapist and can help me mentally and emotionally, and my father because he has taken the role of the man of the house and can keep me safe physically.
Thank you, Carson. And now we have a very special presentation from Jayla.
My name is Jayla Poindexter, and I feel like my whole life has been a mental health battle. I was born with many food allergies, severe eczema, asthma, etc. I'm allergic to dairy, gluten, eggs, fish, soy, nuts, and more. Most people think that my food allergies are the worst of it, and it is a struggle, but my eczema is the real adversary. I grew up having to restrain myself from scratching myself, a battle that I always lost, and I had to deal with the scars it left on my skin. I still have insecurities about it, but I have recently gotten comfortable wearing shorts and not covering up my arms. But my eczema will always haunt me. Luckily, I now take medication that has done wonders for my eczema journey. I have other things that affect my mental health, like how short I am and how young I look. It's not as much of a problem anymore for me, though. I know when I get older, my young genes will be appreciated. I just wanted to give some background to my journey and some of the things I touch on in my poem. When I wrote this poem, I was depressed, I was stressed and overwhelmed with my life. I wasn't living up to my standards, and I was busy all the time. I was suffering the worst of my imposter syndrome. The definition of imposter syndrome is a psychological occurrence in which an individual doubts their skills, talents, or accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. I didn't know it was a thing until my mom told me I had it. I did some research on it and found there are different types. The one I identified the most with was natural genius. Growing up, everything came easy to me. I got straight A's without studying, and I excelled in sports. I was praised for being so smart. Then, I got to my junior year. I was at a new school after a year of online learning, and all of a sudden, I was struggling. I had to study to get good grades, and even then, I still got B's and C's on tests. I ended up earning a 4.0 in my first semester, but it was the hardest I'd had to work. It made me feel like I wasn't worthy of the praise I used to get. By May, I had been struggling more and more to keep up with my classes. I got my SAT scores back, and though it was a good score for some, it ruined my day, and I felt like a failure. I wrote this poem on May 9th in the middle of class after texting my mom and telling her my mental health was at its lowest point. I wrote down how I was feeling, and I liked it. I have since shared this poem, and I think it really shows how I was feeling. I hope it helps someone else. Now that I have taken the time to face my imposter syndrome and give attention to my mental health, I have been able to be a champion in the classroom and on the field. I am taking college classes and succeeding as a senior this year. I know that doing the hard things, having a strong support system, and realizing that being a human means imperfections, I am loving who I am, flaws and all. My poem is called She is Human. She is human. In the beginning, her only problems were her height, her skin, her allergies. They were easy to get over. Her height, not a huge problem when she realized she wasn't the only one. Her skin, not a huge problem when she got medicated. Her allergies, not a huge problem when she found other foods. She had become a master in the art of pushing things away. Stress, not a thing. Anxiety, what for? Sadness, no point. She was a smart young woman, an athletic young woman, a young woman with a bright future. Nothing under the surface, no deep conversations, problems ignored. That was how she lived. She was able to bring light into the room. She was the funny one, the happy one, the joyful one. She's not supposed to feel sad. Crying is for the weak. Weakness is not an option. What happens when she realizes she's not the smartest? She's not the most athletic. Her future might not be that bright. She realizes that she is human as well. Now we're under the surface. Now we can't push everything away. Stress? Tons. She has so much on her plate. Anxiety? Oh yeah. She has fears for the future. Sadness? All the time. She's just not the person she needs to be. But she's supposed to be the strong one. She's not supposed to have feelings. She's not supposed to have fears. She's not supposed to be anything but exemplary. But alas, she is human.
Jayla, thank you so much for that poem and for sharing the background behind it. It was beautiful. Our next question is, why is it difficult to ask for help? And sometimes help for what? And for this question, we're first going to turn to Natalie.
I think it's difficult to ask for help, whether for something small like a school assignment or maybe seeking professional help for mental health because doing so requires you to acknowledge that you're struggling in the first place. Personally, it took me a while to admit that I had mental health problems. I would brush off my depression as just feeling sad and try to manage it all by myself. It wasn't until I admitted to myself that there was a problem that I even considered asking for help. It's also difficult because asking someone else for help puts you in a vulnerable position. You're essentially putting all your trust into that person, not only trusting that they'll support you through whatever you're going through, but that they'll understand your issues without being dismissive or invalidating your experiences.
Thank you very much, Natalie. Carson, how would you answer this question?
Like Natalie said, people do not like asking for help because it allows their vulnerability and struggle to show. This can be for financial problems, asking for help in school, or even just bringing something inside. People also may not want to come off as needy and annoying. Another big thing is being rejected when it already took so much to ask that question. It makes them not want to ask it at all.
Thank you. Melissa.
I can relate a lot to this question because it's difficult for me to be vulnerable with people. It's hard for me to admit that I have trouble asking for help, and when I have a problem, I feel like my problem isn't that important, or I tell myself that I'm being too dramatic and people around the world are dealing with a lot worse things than I am, and it's something negative that I do, but I just don't want to feel like that I'm not like, sorry, I lost my place. I feel like I'm not like taking care, like, I feel like I should not be taking advantage of my situation and the place that I am in my life. And I'm happy with what I have, but I know people are dealing with a lot worse. And I also don't want to be a burden to other people. I feel like I don't want them to feel uncomfortable or feel like they're forced to like help me out. And it's just hard for me to ask for help, and I know there's something that I need to improve, and yeah.
Thank you, Melissa. And we're going to close this one out with a response from Feiruz.
Okay, so I promise I'm going to go somewhere, but I honestly think in some situations asking for help is really easy to me. I find it easy asking for help for homework or coming up to a teacher and asking for help for a college application or going up to a staff member in a store to find something. But for some reason, when it comes to mental health, it's really difficult for me. And I still don't know exactly why, but it's difficult for me to open up to people and to let them know I'm struggling because usually I have trouble admitting to myself that I'm having a difficult time mentally. And a lot of the time I let like little things that bother me I brush it off, like something happens, oh, it's fine. Another thing happens, oh, it's okay. And then it ends up piling up and I end up lashing out at the people I love the most, like my family and my close friends. And then after that, I've dealt with it kind of, I've let it all out, and then the cycle restarts and I lash out again, after a few months. And I understand that that's not the right way to deal with it, but I'm still learning, and I hope, I know a lot of people feel the same way.
Yes, we do. Definitely, that really resonates. Thank you. We're going to turn to Kaz now for a little introduction to what historical trauma is.
Historical trauma is an intergenerational trauma experienced by a specific cultural group that has a history of being systematically oppressed, which can have an impact on psychological and physical health. Historical trauma is accumulative and reverberates across generations. Descendants who have not directly experienced a traumatic event can exhibit the signs and symptoms of trauma, such as depression, fixation on trauma, low self-esteem, anger, and self-destructive behavior.
Thank you, Kaz. For our next question, we're going to turn to Naima first. Naima, how does remembering past experiences give you strength?
Remembering past experiences give me strength because it reminds me that I'm no longer the person that I was in the past. I don't have to be the little girl that hides behind their parents' door and locks it behind it to stay away from struggles and like abuse. And I don't have to be the girl that stays quiet because she's scared of voicing her opinion and her friends being scared. I am now learned from those experiences, and I know that I can just stand up for myself, and I don't have to be scared. I don't have to be quiet. I can just be authentically me and know and be confident in the person that I am today.
Yes, thank you. Jayla, how about you?
Remembering past experiences give me strength in a similar way to Naima. When I was younger, I was a really aggressive child. I was always mad. I was always upset. And that has a lot to do with the way my eczema and my allergies and all of that stuff. I was always sick and I was always mad. But when I look at the past and I see how much I've grown, it gives me more strength to keep being the good person that I am now and not always being upset, not always being angry and aggressive.
Thank you. Kaz.
So past experiences remind me that I have been through worse experiences and I have the strength to persevere. Remembering a positive experience gives me a strength coming from a place where I'm striving for that happiness. I'm striving to be happier and to go back to feel that emotion. Remembering past experiences provide motivation for your willingness to push through.
Yeah, thank you. And last on this question, we have Chasey.
Remembering my past experiences, I feel empowered to know how brave and how strong I am, that at such a young age, I was able to get through it and become the person I am today.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to ask Ruthie and Isabel to come up to share a presentation that they created.
Hi, my name is Isabel. I'm Ruthie, and we're both very Jewish. But today, although we love and are very proud of being Jewish, we wanted to share the mental health toll that comes with being a member of a minority religion that is constantly under attack. In the last month alone, Kanye West, with his Twitter following being more than double the global population of Jews, has spewed inexcusable hatred against our people. His influence has triggered a recent spike in the consistently high levels of anti-Semitism that has left Isabel and myself frustrated and frightened, but not surprised. This level of raw hatred is unfortunately not new to us and is something that we've already seen time and time again. On October 27th, 2018, a gunman entered the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, screaming that all Jews must die. He killed 11 people. I remember that day vividly. I was 12 years old, and it was the first time in my life that I truly grasped that people could be driven to murdering my people for being Jewish. Sure, I'd read and learned about the Holocaust, but it can be easy to separate myself from events that seem so distant to me. Another time, another continent, with the vast majority of my family already safely in the States. The attack on the Tree of Life was real, it was now, and it was devastating. 2 months later, I was on the bima at my own synagogue. What was supposed to be one of the most significant and important days of my life, my bat mitzvah, was tainted by the memory of what had happened at a synagogue just like mine just 2 months prior. Looking out on the crowd of so many people that I loved, of friends and family from near and far, I couldn't help but feel uneasy. The thoughts of a gunman entering the temple filled my mind, and I felt an overwhelming sense of guilt for bringing all of the people that mean the most of me in one vulnerable position. Like it or not, this is the state of mind that newly 13-year-old me was in.
The normal anxieties that I should have faced, speaking and singing in front of a large crowd in a language that I'm not confident in, were easily overshadowed by my fear for my life and the life of my family. In a world where anti-Semitic attacks and biases seem to be around every corner, it can be easy to brush over a headline or to forget about a tragedy and place for the next. I feel no need to tell you all how shocking and horrible a shooting can be. That much should be obvious. But I will never forgive that shooter for taking away my childhood. Constantly being worried for my safety has created a lot of anxiety and stress that no one, especially not a child, should have to deal with. I feel strongly for the next generation of Jewish youth who are continuing to see these events and having the same experience and pain that I did. Jewish teens everywhere are in need of mental health resources for coping with the continuous trauma that this world gives us.
Ruthie's experience is not unique, but common amongst all Jews. I remember going to synagogue the day after the Tree of Life shooting. As my dad pulled up to temple, there were police officers guarding every entrance. My heart sank and eyes teared up. Although I appreciated the security offered, I felt unsafe and exposed. From that moment on, my 11-year-old self knew that I would never be completely safe as a Jew. Every Jewish holiday, as I celebrated my temple, there was always a thought in the back of my mind that we're about to become another news story. Every Hanukkah, my excitement over gifts and latkes is dampened by knowing that anti-Semitic attacks increase every year on those 8 days. When I light my menorah or Shabbos candles, I fear the wrong person will walk by my window and become violent. Most recently, Kanye West's anti-Semitic tirade has created increased anxiety within me, and I struggle to focus in school in fear of what my classmates might think of Jewish people. Kanye's emboldening of anti-Semitic rhetoric has made me even regret being so publicly Jewish because of the possible consequences. As many make excuses for his behavior, I, as a Jew, can see how much of his rhetoric mirrors that of Nazism in the 1930s, and I know all too well how dangerous that is. As I become more and more fearful of my future, the general public is getting more and more apathetic to our concerns. Jews are often told that anti-Semitism isn't a real problem anymore and that there are more pressing issues. This leads to isolation, depression, and severe anxiety as we cope with generational trauma whilst dealing with constant attacks on our humanity. I'm so tired of living in fear of things that so many people refuse to believe exist.
These are experiences not only lived by Jewish people, but by so many marginalized groups.
So today we're asking of you not to solve every problem, but to listen to the voices of all members of marginalized communities and think deeply about the mental health struggles that can stem from the constant fear of prejudice, discrimination, and hate.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for that, Isabel and Ruthie. Feiruz, we're going to turn to you now to learn a little bit more about school trauma.
Students can be traumatized in school by oppressive policies, structures, and instructional and curricular practices, as well as everyday interactions in our schools.
Thank you very much. Our next question is, how do you open up about your trauma to your parents? And we're going to turn to Naima first.
It's actually very difficult to open up to my parents about my trauma. It's almost like, since I'm a senior this year and I'm old, so I'm old enough to know what's right or wrong or know how to clean my room and do all the things I have to do, all my responsibilities, but I'm not that old enough to be grown where I feel myself having to always try to be the most independent as I can be. Try to be the most adult or try to be the most responsible, the most mature that I can be, but I am still only 17. But I feel like I almost sometimes can't go to my parents because I want them to know that I am an adult and I can figure it out and I will be okay. But since I am only 17, I have many moments where I am overwhelmed and overstressed, and sometimes I open up to my parents accidentally, where sometimes I'll just be crying in my room. My parents will be like, yo, what's up? And I just have to accidentally open up, and it turns into a whole thing. But my parents are very supportive about me, but sometimes it can be very hard to open up to my parents because I want them to know that I can take care of myself, but I still am only 17.
Thank you, Naima. Koa, we would love to hear from you.
Thank you. Hey y'all, so in order to open up about your trauma to your parents, you have to trust yourself. And what I mean by trust yourself is you have to make sure you're comfortable with everything you're saying. You have to understand all parents are different, and some parents understand what their kids are going through and provide the help that they need, while other parents don't give their kids the amount of attention or support that they're wanting. This doesn't always mean that they don't care about you, but it can mean that they don't know how to help you. A lot of parents never had a support system with them and learned how to express their feelings. So when their kids pour out their emotions and how they feel, they honestly don't know how to help. Take baby steps and understand not everyone knows how to help other people.
Thank you, Koa. Jayla.
For me, opening up to my parents about my trauma has gotten easier as time has gone on, as I realized that they were there for most of my trauma. Like, they're the ones who took me to the hospital. They're the ones who bought me my medications. They were there, like, the whole time. They watched me struggle through the way my body, like, just poisoned itself, basically. But it hasn't always been that easy. I used to be a very emotionally closed-off kid, but I think as I've grown up and realized that they were there and they know that I can talk to them, and like I know I can talk to them because, you know, they know what happened. They were there, so it was easier.
Thank you. And last on this question, Mahira.
I think building and having a level of trust with my parents was the first step in this journey. It helped me to know that they would try to understand how the trauma affected me and how it can present itself differently in everyone. Having this trust let me be emotionally vulnerable with them, and it helps me connect to them and show I trust them as much as they trust me.
Thank you. All right, we have reached the point in the evening where we're going to ask for some audience participation. So if you have your phones, we ask that you take them out and scan this QR code. We're going to do a little poll. We want to hear from you what you've been hearing tonight and a little bit about your own experiences with mental health. So if you're unfamiliar with QR codes, if you open up the camera app, you should be able to point it up at the screen. It should pop up with a little icon that directs you to a direct poll website. It'll probably say that the poll is not open yet, but in just a moment we will press play on the poll and the first question will appear.
I'll
Yeah.
do a slow count to 10.
Okay. If the QR code doesn't work, just type it in, please. HTTP. Okay, good. All right, thank you. Thank you for the feedback. Appreciate it.
Audience participation.
We're just too close to the screen. Okay, awesome. So we have two students who are going to help us with these questions. We've got Karina and Steph up here along with Mrs. Piper. All right, here we go.
How important is it to manage your mental health? As we can see, the vast majority of the audience does believe that it is very important to manage your mental health. Have you had someone you love need support with their mental health? Almost 100% of the people in this room have had someone they love or in their life need support with their mental health. Did you feel you had the knowledge and or the tools to support them? As we can see, more than half of the room feels that they did not have the right tools or knowledge to support their loved ones, and this is something that we will continue to improve on in our community. Is mental health acknowledged in your household by your family? As we can see, most of the people in this room do acknowledge mental health in their households. However, we know we're not perfect, and this number will grow as we learn.
When you need to process challenges or your emotions, do you feel you have the space to do this? Yeah, so obviously, almost everyone in the audience thinks that sometimes, so this is something we still have to work on, because in some places we feel supported and in other places we don't. Where are you able to process challenges and your emotions?
You can choose more than one.
So obviously most of the audience kind of finds our safe place within ourselves, so maybe we can work on relying on each other, finding other safe places. Do you feel your mental health is prioritized at school above academics? So obviously, it's a no and depends on the staff member, meaning that we don't feel our school as a whole prioritizes our mental health over academics. Which form of trauma did you learn about tonight that was new to you? All right, so as you can see, we all learned about a little bit more about historical trauma, and hopefully we can continue to learn more about the other traumas. And has your identity impacted your mental health? So obviously this just again highlights the importance of our identity, especially with mental health. Oh, that's a yes.
All right, thank you so much for joining us in thinking about our own mental health and sharing your own experiences and what you've learned. We have one question left and one more term for you to learn about this evening. Our last question, we're going to start with Farial. What are the spiritual, emotional, or physical signs that you are healing?
Okay, well, I just want to say that first, if you are struggling, please reach out to someone for help. It might be one of the most toughest things to do, but it shows true bravery. So some spiritual signs of healing could include things like meditation, prayer, connecting to your religion, or even something as simple as accepting the fact that you went through trauma and rough patches of your mental health. For me personally, I am Muslim, and praying my 5 daily prayers definitely helps me heal spiritually. Emotional signs of healing could be that you are not lashing out towards family members or friends, nor are you blaming yourself for situations that are out of your control. Another important emotional step of healing is that your thoughts are more positive and calm. Relationships with others are improving, and feeling motivated to get through the day could be examples of emotional healing. Positive affirmations are a great emotional sign of healing for me, and it increases my self-empowerment and self-worth from my perspective. Physical signs of healing include having less headaches, migraines, stress, and fatigue, as well as your body feeling more relaxed instead of tense, and you can be more welcoming of embraces from other people, such as hugs from others. A major healing sign for me that was physical included my eating habits. I became more cautious about what I was eating and if it would impact my body positively or negatively.
Thank you. Koa.
All right, I'm back. So obviously, healing is going to look different for everybody. So recovering or healing is a personal experience and will look different, like I said. But when you're recovering from a trauma, you have the ability to live in the present without being overwhelmed by the thoughts in the past.
Thank you, Koa. Karina.
Sorry about that little delay. I think for me personally, one of the biggest signs to recognize healing from my own trauma is feeling at peace. Finally having peace in my life and letting go of all the pent-up anger and resentment that I often hold in myself is the only way to truly move past something traumatic. Whether it happened 5 years ago or 5 days ago, letting myself process what I have gone through and then accepting it has taken a giant weight off my chest, and I feel like I can breathe.
Thank you, Karina. And Kaz.
When we're healing from a traumatic event, no matter if it's physical or mental, we're affected in both ways. When healing physically, it's not just wounds healing, it's visually seen in our energy. Our energy shows the world what's going on, and we accept the pain that we have been through. In an emotional way, our emotions might have been all over the place, or a very strong emotion takes precedence, but when we're healing, our emotions are more balanced and soothed. Another sign of emotional healing is when you stop relying on people and you accept the pain that you've been. If we have more energy and safe emotional relief, that's a significant sign that we're recovering and healing.
Thank you. Wonderful. All right, and one of our coalition members had a band concert. So Layla is here through video to tell us a little bit about collective trauma.
Collective trauma can be defined as psychological reactions to a traumatic event that can affect an entire society. It suggests that tragedy is represented in the collective memory of the group, and like all forms of memory, it compromises not only a reproduction of events, but also an ongoing reconstruction of the trauma to make sense of it. Collective memory of trauma is different from individual memory because collective memory persists beyond the lives of direct survivors of the events and is remembered by group members that may be far removed from the traumatic events in time and space. Collective trauma can be defined.
And that concludes the questions for our panelists. Can we give a big round of applause to all of these amazing students? Amazing, amazing work. All right, to wrap up this evening, we acknowledge that being an educator, a mentor, a parent, an adult in the lives of young people today is not easy. There are many hurdles, and so we want to, all of us, take a moment to thank those adults who have personally impacted the lives of the students up on this stage, especially in culturally responsive ways. So right now, students are going to go down and share one adult who has really impacted their lives. Go ahead, Eva.
Miss Angfer.
Miss Martin.
Miss Ingfer. My cousin Jeremiah.
Miss Ferguson.
Mr. Molinary.
Miss Carvelis.
Mr. Leali.
Mrs. Barajas.
Mr. Munsinger.
Mr. Ochoa.
My mom and Miss Martin.
Mrs. Campbell.
Miss Heemstra.
Miss Rosenbach.
Mrs. Guston.
Mrs. Palumbo.
Miss Piper.
Madame Wetlock and Mrs. Osage.
Miss Raz.
Mr. Roberts.
Mrs. Piper.
Mrs. Piper. Miss Raleigh and Miss Simmons.
All right, let's please give these amazing adults a huge round of applause. Woo. So if you are here, you will get your beautiful rose. Ooh, bless you, dear. Do we perhaps have the, can we grab the raffle tickets? They were in the teal bowl. While Miss Piper is getting her workout, I just want to acknowledge we have some district administrators present tonight. They're in the back here. If you don't mind just standing up and showing the people that you're here. Yes, yes, yes. Wave and wave and wave. Dr. Sparlin, I know you didn't think you were going to get off that easy. Come on down. Please put your hands together for our amazing superintendent, Dr. Sparlin. Woo! We are so grateful to have you here this evening.
Well, thank you, Dr. Waller, and thank you, students, and thank you, everyone that's here. Tonight was a powerful night, and I'm so happy to be a part of it, so thank you.
Thank you so much. And also, so we have a new director of SEL this year. Her name is Dr. Kristen Paul. If you can just wave, there we are. She has been dynamic in truly pushing SEL, not only for our students, but for the adults, because we going crazy, y'all. So we are just so grateful to have her, and thank you to the Student Services Department for being here, families. And so I have a few raffles here. Do you have, I think we're good. Oh, great. Oh, wonderful. So it looks like if you filled one out, you're going to get a book. So, Shanice Thomas, woohoo! Oliver Velasquez, are you here? Are you here? Are you here? Velasquez, yay! Amber Jump, Amber Jump, yay! You get a book. You get a book. You get a book. You get a book. No name, but 785-632. Who are you? Yay! Congratulations. And I have 785-636. Who are you? Uh-oh. Oh, there you are, sweetie pie. You got the book. It's all for you. All righty. So we do, and we have one other raffle. Valerie Talton, do you want to come up? Come on down. Quickly. Tell the people what you do. I know, right? Thank you for going with our improvisation. All right.
Good evening. What a beautiful, beautiful event this was. Thank you guys for sharing and giving of your hearts and inviting us to this special space. My name is Valerie Talton. I'm with Accelerate Career Through Education. We also do scholarship planning, but I'm here today to talk about mental health. And I'm a certified youth life coach. We have group sessions on Zoom, or I can come to your home, or we could take a walk. So I have an affirmation book that in 2020 on Zoom, I had a bunch of students, and I always talk about making little notes. I'm a big fan for Post-it notes. So leaving a note for a friend or for yourself or for a family member. And so the book is a bunch of Post-it notes with prompts to get you started in your journey of journaling and reflections in there. So it's titled You Plant the Seed, I Plant the Seed. So I have 2 of them to give away, and one goes to Myla S. And the next one is Cedra A. So you come get your book. Awesome. There you go.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so we are going to end our evening. Are you ready?
Who are we? Coalition. What do we come to do? Amplify. Who are we for? Of the people, by the people, for the people.
All right. Thank you so much. Please stop at the tables on your way out. There's a lot of amazing and necessary resources that are there. These are groups of people who are doing this for free. And we know that our mental health is imperative to us being ready to be the geniuses that we were put here to be. So thank you so much. Have a wonderful evening.